Elemental was a movie that I desperately wanted to succeed. Pixar's been in a financial and critical rut for years now, to the point where it's basically become a national pastime to dump all over their new releases. These guys used to be the untouchable titans of 10-point dives, and yet they've been doing nothing but flops lately, launching bombs from their sinking ship that always managed to blow up in their faces. While I personally love most of these movies, it really felt like Pixar needed a Hail Mary, a major saving throw. Maybe a return to form of sorts? And the trailers for Elemental made it look like that's what they were going for. A colorful and immersive world, easily marketable characters, the old signature Pixar parlor trick of giving emotions to non-living things. I create life! What could go wrong? Well, some pre-release online discourse mixed with poor advertising later, and... yeah, that is not a big number. That is a small number. Against all odds, though, I still bought my ticket and plopped my pants area down in a seat, and... this movie's great. I love this movie so freaking much, and it looks like I'm not alone here. Seriously, I was expecting a tidal wave of I told you so's from the internet at large, but a lot of people agree that this is a simple yet still smart and sentimental movie that deserves way more attention than it's getting, which is awesome to hear. But honestly, my appreciation for this movie goes beyond surface level daws and oohs. In my eyes, not only is it a spectacle made for the big screen with beautifully executed bonds in the foreground, but there's also a supple amount of subtle messaging going on in the background. We don't just get to see cute interactions between the elements of the planet, but we're also subliminally shown the 4 key elements that are needed for healthy and effective relationships as a whole. In some ways, this might be the most deep Pixar movie we've gotten in quite a while. And if you think I'm just talking crazy, let's take a look at the 4 elements of Elemental and explain how an equal dosage of each can help a relationship thrive. There will be spoilers for Elemental in here, so please go watch the movie this weekend if you can, and then come back here if you want a little extra food for thought. Or if you just don't care, then let's get started. First, we have air, which represents fun and freedom. I hope I'm not the first one to tell you this, but relationships are supposed to be enjoyable. Sharing activities, experiences, feelings of joy and elation with others, alongside a desire to take on the world at large and step outside of personal comfort zones. Literally going wherever the wind takes you in some cases. While air isn't showcased a lot in the movie, the primary air character, Gale, is a pretty huge fun junkie, screaming out for her favorite sports team and playing a key role in helping Ember see the wisteria flower, an activity that accomplishes pretty much nothing other than a once-in-a-lifetime experience for Ember. Not to mention that the Air Society as a whole is the only group to have their own dedicated sporting event, aka a fun game that everyone's invited to enjoy even if they're not made of clouds. Heck, it ends up being Wade, a water person, that puts the crowd in a cheering frenzy to lift the spirits of a downtrodden athlete, showing the sense of community that something like this can help create. Of course, freedom in a relationship should be used in moderation, since you do need some defined structure to ensure it'll last. If we focus on nothing but enjoyment, the harsh consequences of reality are gonna sneak up on us and run us down. Like this air dude who wasn't paying attention and would have been freaking street pizza if he wasn't made of invincible cloud vapor. Having no contingency plans and no solid ground to stand on will only lead to crashing and burning when all is said and done, both in regards to personal bonds and society. An excess of freedom can be great in the moment, but disastrous in the long run, so be sure to look where you're frickin' going. Next up is Earth, which represents stability. In spite of all the enjoyment we can derive from our relationships, we need to make sure we stay grounded to some degree. Focusing on future endeavors, finances, and unavoidable concrete obstacles will help you build a solid base structure, allowing your relationships to prepare for what can, and often will, happen. Earth isn't explored much in the movie either, but we do see that Fern, one of our only named Earth characters, is a bureaucrat with a secure desk job who has a very dry, straightforward outlook on life. He's about as stable and grounded as you can possibly get when it comes to life choices. Pair that with the fact that most of the buildings that keep society running, such as the inspection office and the train station, have a mostly Earth-based aesthetic, and it's obvious that the plant people are a big part of keeping the city in shape. However, while stability is important, it's obviously not everything. I mean, what's the point of retaining the structural aspects of a relationship if you don't take the time to enjoy it? I'm very guilty of this. We're all focused a lot on future planning without realizing, hey, there's someone out there who really cares about you. Why don't you put the work down and keep them company for a few hours? There needs to be an evenness between the technical and humane parts of a relationship, or it risks becoming unstable. This applies to society too, where increased morale can lead to higher productivity for groups, businesses, and entire countries. It's extremely ironic that the depictions of Earth people in this film are the ones that desperately need to go touch grass. Fire is the element of pride and self-sustainability. I don't think this needs to be said, but most relationships are a give and take. Whether it's your family, your friends, or your partner, it's not their duty to constantly cater to you 24/7. If you solely rely on others for things like emotional stability and personal problems, then it stops being a relationship and starts being servitude. You need to be independent and willing to carry yourself even if you have someone loyal by your side. There's nothing wrong with asking for a favor or a shoulder to cry on, but if you're fully capable of handling your own problems and you just choose not to or don't even try, then that's just gonna lead to searing long-term pain for both sides. But at the same time, being too independent is also a bad thing. If you fail to communicate your problems, if you bottle up all your personal emotions, you are going to hurt yourself or worse. I say this from experience since I'm guilty of this too. Remember that your partner or friend or whatever is your equal. Let them feel like it. Let them take some of the burden off your shoulders, and you'll both be more happy for it. You'll feel better, and they'll feel happy because they got to contribute to that happiness. Fire is by far the most focused on element in the film, and it perfectly illustrates the pros and cons of self-sustainment as shown through Ember's personal struggles and Bernie's societal woes. Starting with Bernie, this absolute unit migrated to a city that clearly wasn't built with him in mind, bought a disaster of a building out of his own pocket, and fixed it up by hand, not only making a stable life for his family, but also getting the fireball rolling for more flame folk to move into Element City. This guy did all that on his own in a place that clearly didn't care about him. What an absolute boss. However, as the movie goes on, we do start to see some cracks in the woodwork. Or in this case, leaks in the pipes. Bernie's store is constantly flooding due to faulty plumbing, and he still insists on fixing the problem himself. While it is impressive that Bernie was able to build this place all on his own, it's obvious that he couldn't prepare for everything. There's a lot of know-how and insider training that goes into making it in the big city versus a small village, and while the plumbing Bernie did kept him stable for a time, it clearly wasn't able to hold up forever. Now, the obvious solution here would be to contact someone else in the city, preferably a water person, to come and help him with this issue that is literally life or death for him. But because the people in the city were so bigoted towards him in the past, he has a deep-seated hatred for anyone that's not fire and insists on doing things by himself. We see that times have changed and the element dwellers are a lot more kind and accepting now, if Wade's family's any indication, but this guy is just too close-minded and burned from the past to even consider help from another element. Now, I'm not placing all the blame on Bernie, since society definitely could have done a better job at extending a hand to him. Heck, the fact that it took this long for an inspector to come on the scene makes me think that most of the city forgot they existed. But if Bernie was willing to be more open to change, he probably could have got this problem sorted out in a jiffy. Bernie does show that while single-handedly providing for your people is honorable and impressive, it can't last forever, especially in an unfamiliar environment that requires outside help and knowledge to sustain yourself. You gotta be willing to let the past go and open yourself up again to new people and ideas. And hey, society as a whole taking a more proactive role in this wouldn't kill him either. Meanwhile, Ember's issues are much more personal. On the surface, she's a feisty gal with a fire in her heart, as well as her everything else. She does her job efficiently, she takes care of her family, she's able to handle herself in a city where everything has the potential to kill her, or as most people call it, a city, and she doesn't take lip from any puddle, tree, or cloud that mocks her. She seems like a poster child for the whole strong, independent woman type that people love to mock, but Ember has one fatal character flaw that makes her very interesting to follow: her refusal to open up emotionally. Despite being next in line to run her father's shop, Ember is internally tormented by the fact that she's not entirely sure if that's what she wants to do with her life. Heck, by the time she visits Wade's place, she's almost entirely sure that's not what she wants to do. But her refusal to communicate or confide in anyone leads to a bottle up of stress and sadness that not only hurts her internally, but leads to massive rage-filled outbursts and breakdowns, sometimes in public. When your internal struggles end up getting to that point, you gotta realize that something's wrong. Luckily, she does open up more over the course of the movie to characters like Wade and Bernie, ultimately realizing that you don't have to grin and bear it for the sake of someone else's happiness. You can be honest, you can be vulnerable. If someone truly cared about you and they found out that you've been suffering in silence, I'm sure they wouldn't even think twice about wanting to comfort you. Ember has such a beautiful character arc, and it shows that while it's good to sustain yourself, never let it get to the point where you damage yourself. I'm really glad they chose to use fire to represent these kinds of struggles, because while fire is capable of burning and surviving for a long time on its own, if it's not fed or protected by outside forces, it can easily be snuffed out just as quickly as it came into existence. And guess what? So can you. And of course there's water, which is the most obvious. Empathy and selflessness. Giving. Providing. Is there anything more rewarding in life than doing well by others? Providing comfort, sympathy, and charity to those that require it most? I've said it once and I'll say it a million more times. While everyone has surface level differences like race, gender, wealth, beliefs, whatever, we are all united in suffering. Everybody hurts. And the sooner we can get that through our heads, the sooner we can all heal together. Giving is one of the biggest cornerstones of any relationship, and for good reason. However, people need to realize that there is such a thing as being too kind and too charitable. Self-care is just as important as caring for others, not only because it'll help you better provide for others later, but because, well, you matter. Your well-being, both physically and emotionally, is just as valid as that of the people you're helping. Regardless of what some may say, there's nothing wrong with wanting, desiring, or asking for things. It's the very nature of our human soul to crave comforts and new experiences. And as long as you're not excessive about it or treat your companions like workhorses, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to give you what you want or need, because they care about you. Wade and his family are obviously a comedic exaggeration of empathetic people, spewing out tears like a garden hose if someone so much as stubs their toe, but he still shows all the benefits of what can happen when you exercise selflessness. I already mentioned how he got the airball crowd to do a wave for a player, knowing how much he's emotionally struggling, which speaks for itself, but he also makes an effort to prod Ember for information about her internal struggles so he can help her work through them. Some people are more stubborn than others when it comes to opening up, and sometimes you do kinda have to poke the emotions out of them if you feel like it'll help them heal easier, as long as you're not too forceful. Wade also shows the problems with being too vulnerable and considerate of others, as he's a major pushover who constantly apologizes and winds up as a doormat more often than not, but just like Ember, he does work to grow more of a backbone as the movie progresses. And while his arc isn't as fleshed out as Ember's, he does have by far one of the best character moments in the whole film. During the ceremony when Bernie's going to pass the shop on to Ember, Wade crashes the party and delivers a rousing speech where he declares that even though Ember is flawed on many technical levels, at the end of the day, all that matters is that he loves her, and he knows she loves him too. I adore this scene because Wade is not only doing this for Ember's sake because he knows she needs someone, but he's doing it for himself too. Ember is someone he wants just as much as she wants him. He likes her company, the way she makes him feel, the new experiences he witnesses while around her. And in the end, he makes the push to chase down what he wants and lays everything down in front of him in an attempt to have it, ultimately succeeding in the end. A relationship should be something you want just as much as something your partner wants. It's obviously important to be a shoulder to cry on in any relationship, but remember that you're not just a shoulder. You're a body, a heart, a mind, and a soul, and you deserve to treat yourself and be treated like so. At the very end of the movie, we start seeing the first examples of bi-elemental couples, or at least them being much more upfront and widespread. Air hooks up with earth, earth with fire, fire with water, etc. We also see businesses and residents of different kinds moving into Firetown. Special mention goes to the pawn shop, which is just some god-tier punning if I've ever seen it. It's a scene that emanates the greatest sense of community we've seen throughout the film, alongside the formation of constant budding relationships that seem to stay intact even as the credits roll, and I think this sums up my point better than anything else. While it is possible to survive while focusing mostly on one single element, we will only thrive with a healthy balance of all four, caring for others as well as ourselves, seeking enjoyment while keeping one foot on the ground. I honestly feel like this is the most universal Pixar movie ever made. Not the objective best or even the subjective best in my book, but the one that speaks to basically everybody without much of a leaning towards one group. Finding Nemo, for example, will always resonate most with parents, Ratatouille with creative types, Monsters U with college students, Turning Red with tweens, etc, etc. Anyone can watch them and learn from them, but I feel like those groups will be the ones to click with those movies the most. I didn't get that feeling at all with Elemental. Maybe it leans a little bit towards immigrants, but the movie mainly focuses on the basic building blocks of human relationships as a whole, just like how the actual elements are the building blocks of our planet. And that's not even mentioning the little enjoyments I got out of this thing. The breathtaking color and visuals, the precious interactions between our two main leads, the freaking dance scene they have under the bridge, the design of Wade's house, all the puns on the shop signs and products. That little kid who keeps giving Ember his pit flowers was hilarious. The way Wade innovates with his aquatic body to light the love incense is adorable. Wade skating across the water and making a rainbow was awesome. That freaking Love song that played during the montage, which I listened to on loop on my way home back from the theater. Happiness. So much raw freaking happiness. I can't even describe it. I don't know, maybe my thoughts will change if I watch it again, but this movie really managed to hit me deep when I first saw it. It may not have stolen the show per se, but it did manage to steal my attention and my heart. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Have some coffee. This is much more low-key than my usual content, but I just wanted to have a little fireside chat with you all about a movie that really sits well with me. If you've got any thoughts on Elemental, good or bad, or maybe if you've got some kind of relationship story of your own you want to share, feel free to leave a comment below. Give like and subscribe a big high five, and be sure to spread the vid around if you feel so inclined. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.